By now, the shock is worn off. Yeah, Craig Counsell is the new Cubs manager. David Ross is gone. And I feel like there's a few reasons that the Cubs made this move. Obviously, Craig Counsell's in-game managing ability and how he uses the bullpen. But I also think there's another reason. It's player development. And we're going to talk about that on our show today. Hey, we're going to develop you as well as part of the Cubs Baseball Channel family. If you guys aren't already part of our roster, then please join now. It's free. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like Cubs content. Let's talk some Cubs baseball. All right, guys, let's talk some Cubs. I'm Mick Gillispie. He's Chad Anderson, and a couple of OG Cub fans and guys that have spent a lot of time around the Cubs talking about Craig Counsell and player development and why he is the manager and why it made sense. And basically, the best way to describe it is, and this isn't just David Ross, but in my opinion, David Ross was a guy who was like, hey, I'm managing at the big leagues. I'm not here to develop. I'm here to win. And for Craig Counsell, who came from Milwaukee, it was all about winning, but it was also about developing because they had to. And he was a guy who spent time in the front office, following Bob Melvin, who was one of the great GMs or, guys that ran organizations, president. And he knew how important it was to continue player development from the time that you sign until the time that a guy retires.
Yeah, if you look at, with Craig Counsell and what he did and what he's done in the past, this is something I looked up, Mick. We're talking about development and players and all these things. That was something you and we constantly talked about, right? It's like we were frustrated. I think a lot of people were frustrated. We don't feel like Matt Mervis really got a fair shake at first base. He kind of came up, didn't perform in the very short window that he had, got sent back down. He's almost like discarded at this point. Like people don't talk about him in an excited way. They're like, who are we signing at first base? Not, hey, let's give Matt Mervis a chance. There are other positions too. We complained, you and I, about PCA and just how limited he was used down the stretch. And it's like, this guy's a freaking future all-star, and we're on him just because he's had a few bad plate appearances, but he's amazing defensively. Canario, he was on the roster, we forgot about him. Assad is pitching so well, and it's like he disappeared. There were just guys that could have and should have, in our opinions, played a little bit more. And one thing I looked at before we started this show, because I was kind of curious about it a little bit, is if you look at Craig Counsell, all right, Milwaukee Brewers won the division last year. That team, the Milwaukee Brewers team last year, according to Baseball Reference, the starting lineup, the batting lineup here, every single player but two under the age of 30, except Christian Yelich at 31 and Brian Anderson at 30. So the oldest player is 31 years old. Like, he's using that young talent in Milwaukee over and over, and he's winning divisions with that. So that also just gets me excited about what Counsell's able to do from a prospect and development and letting some of the kids play.
When he and Jet Hoyer met, one of the conversation points was how to develop players that are coming from the minor leagues and going to the big leagues. And Craig Counsell said it's hard. And it is. I mean, look at how good Pete Crow Armstrong is. Yep. And a lot of you guys like, hey, Mick, your guy didn't perform. Your guy was 0 for whatever. He didn't do this and he didn't do that. And you're right. He didn't. He failed. And he'll fail some more. But he'll also succeed a lot too. And Craig Counsell talked about that. He said, look, you can't replicate big league pitching in the minor leagues because it's just not there. You have to go up there and experience that. How are those guys going to attack you? The comfort level. Pete Crow Armstrong he's got this swag He didn't have that there. He just didn't look like himself. Okay.
Yeah.
You'll see it when it happens. Right. And I was surprised by that. And then I go back, the guy that he reminds me of that's a Cubs player was Javi Baez, the Baez swag. But his manager was Joe Madden. And the whole thing was, hey, we're developing these guys to get to the big leagues and let them play. Now, he had also had some success in the minor leagues. And then also in spring training that I think helped Javi Baez. But it also is Joe Madden, who is a master of when the guys get there, make them feel like they belong. So much of this is, right. So much of it is just mental. But Alexander Canario, you mentioned that, just rotting away on the bench. And, just it felt like Javier Assad, and then Matt Mervis is the best example.
Well, then they trade Nelson Velasquez.
They trade Nelson Velasquez. He did good, and then all of a sudden he's not playing anymore. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't sit here and defend David Ross's use of young players because I disagreed with it. And I feel like his lack of experience for the position was kind of one of the reasons why he struggled this year. It was a different roster. It was a different job than when he first came up. When he first came up, damn right. There was no talent coming from the minor leagues. It was like, It was an empty mine. Like all the gems and, the gold was taken out of it. You're just sifting a bunch of sand, Now you're talking about sifting through and finding big nuggets of gold. You got to take advantage of that. And so Craig Counsell and just the way that he had to really glean the most out of those players in Milwaukee to be competitive. The guy had to do less to get more out of it. That's the exciting part about what he brings. If the Cubs right now, they traded Nelson Velasquez, and you guys can debate me now, and in a couple years, we'll see who's right. Nelson Velasquez for Jose Quaz is going to be a bad trade, my opinion. Okay, we'll see.
Agreed.
We'll see if I'm wrong. The guy only hit a home run every 9-something at bats there for a while, for Kansas City. He's going to play all the time. But you're right. There was no position for him. And then Jonathan Perlaza, as far as my understanding goes, is going to be a free agent, and he's going to end up, going somewhere else too. And he hit 20 some home runs, I think like 25 home runs, 85 RBIs, and hit 284 in AAA. Yeah. As a switch hitter with power from both sides of the plate, that's something. And that's another good player, but they have an outfield logjam right now. You still got Owen Casey. You still got PCA. You still got Alexander Canario. And they're all better than Perlaza. Yeah. But this is what the problem is when you have these young players. You got to figure out how to use them so you can get more value for them.
And that's it. That's the point I was ready to make, is that I don't think Cubs fans are going to have to come to terms with some of these guys who have so much upside and promise and potential MLB production and swag and the whole deal.
Yeah.
They're going to get traded. You can't play 6 outfielders. You just can't. I'm sorry. You only have 1 DH. Thank God the NL has the DH now, right? Because otherwise you have one less prospect who's playing. But that's the key, is that everybody's going to have to understand and realize, hey, some of these guys are going to get traded, and some of these guys are going to go off to another organization, and they're going to perform, and they're going to hit 20, 30, 40 home runs, or bat in the heart of somebody else's lineup, or be in the playoffs competing against the Cubs, or whatever the case may be. The key is the return on the investment and the value you get back. And I think that's where the frustration comes with Nelson Velasquez. There was nowhere to put him. He didn't have a spot. But with Velasquez, it was like, we got Quas, and that was it.
Yeah.
Just kind of a middle reliever, when we both look at Velasquez and go, damn, like this guy's going to be really good.
Right.
So it's
not even a back end guy, right? Not even a back end guy, not someone that you could really rely on. Like he was up and down. He's okay. Right. Not to me, the type of trade that, that really precipitates that deal. Now we'll find out. Maybe Quaz makes some adjustments and he ends up, going through the Cubs pitching seminar thing that they do, and he'll be fine, and he'll be way better, because he's going to have to be to make that trade worth it to me. The other thing too is just a couple quick thoughts on Craig Counsell's press conference. I could definitely tell that this has been a really tough time for him because Milwaukee fans and the community has freaked out so much about him joining the Cubs. And you can tell, I think that's why he was just so kind of like, you could just definitely feel the pain in his, leaving and the press conference on Monday. But what's going to happen next is when they boo the hell out of him and they're yelling at him and they keep vandalizing his signs and stuff, he's going to forget about that. It's not going to be the thing that it is right now. It's the toughest part of it, but he seems like a really good guy, and I feel for him.
Yeah, that's just tough. That was one of those. I don't know that he necessarily wanted to leave, but I think he did want to go to the Cubs. I think he just looks at it as baseball, traditional and Wrigley Field and all that kind of stuff. But how about this too? We haven't mentioned it yet. Cubs get the primetime slot to open up Major League Baseball season in March against the Rangers on the road at Globe Life. So we're going to get to see Counsell and the Cubs in the direct spotlight first night of the year.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to cover it all here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Let me remind you guys that the channel right now is presented by the Tennessee Smokies and their team store. Pick up some championship swag, first title in 45 years. And they've got some great stuff available for you. Thanks for hanging out.